Hi, Dylan. Thank you so much for joining me this podcast episode. Really appreciate it, man. How are you doing today?
Good, good. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine. Super excited to have a conversation with you. Like, how did you build a couple of your startups? Obviously, one you learned a lesson from, another is you actually doing it right now. So, yeah, before we get to the startup phase, I'd love to know more about yourself. How did you end up being an entrepreneur? What do you used to do before that?
Yeah, so a little bit about myself. I graduated from college in 2015 and moved out to Seattle,
Mhm.
where I was a software developer at Amazon for 4 years, a few different teams in AWS and Alexa, basically following that, individual contributor software developer track.
Yeah.
And that was going well. I was liking it. I was definitely feeling challenged and fulfilled. And then about halfway through that 4 year tenure, I was actually diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I went back home to New Jersey, where I got 6 months of chemotherapy. I was on a paid medical leave, and I was at home just playing a
Mm.
lot of video games, um, and I started to just hack on a side project with some of my friends. Didn't want my programming skills to get rusty, and so was just hacking on this fun side project, and that basically led to my first startup, Draft Buff. And so I returned to Amazon after that 6 month medical leave, and then I was basically doing my day job, and then going home and working on this project. And it started to grow, and I just felt so much more excited and attached to what I was building there, rather than for Amazon.
Mhm.
And so I continued working, and after 2 more years, I decided to quit and dive full time into this startup. And so that startup was Draft Buff, and I was doing that for 2 years. Learned so much, learned a lot. Learned how to transition from individual contributor developer to CEO, and how to uh, fundraise and create business plans, and just so much, and building a team.
Yeah.
And had a lot of success with that, but not quite hit that rocket ship growth. And so basically about a year ago, my team and I decided to basically pivot from Draft Buff to our new venture, which is Thea Studios, and sort of take all of those learnings from Draft Buff, and apply that here. And so yeah, now I've basically been working on this, my second startup, for the last year, and um, have also learned so much from that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's sort of a little bit about my journey, and happy to dive into both of those startups and learnings from each of them. But that's sort of my journey in a nutshell.
Yeah, the great journey you had, man. And yeah, so sorry to you, like you diagnosed with a form of cancer, those who didn't understand, like we mentioned. So yeah, you diagnosed with the form of cancer and then you fought through and yeah, starting a couple of businesses. So what actually went wrong with the first business, you think, like then you had to start the second one?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just the market.
Mm.
We Draft Buff was a fantasy esports platform in the esports market,
Yeah.
and we had a lot of success. We had over 150,000 users join the platform over 2 years.
Mhm.
Retention within a season was strong. Anywhere from 50 to 70% retention within a season, using it for you know uh, uh, you know 8 to 10 minutes per week, which is um, or 8 to 10 minutes during the regular season, and up to 20 minutes during the preseason, which is pretty competitive.
Right.
The problem is that's all great during the season, and then the season ends and you have 6 months of inactivity. And you basically have this innate window of churn. And so the app becomes dead for those users, and then you effectively need to reactivate them when the season starts up again.
Yeah.
Um, and that just we just couldn't get a monetization model that worked with those user behaviors. What it really means is that you need to monetize the user within one season.
Right.
And so for League of Legends, which is the most popular esport, that's around 7 weeks. For some of the other ones, Call of Duty, Overwatch, you're looking at 4 or 5 months. Um, but to monetize in that sort of limited window, generally skews towards gambling.
Right.
Your unit economics don't quite work out. You obviously need to cover the cost of market acquisition.
Yeah.
And so because you're not banking on that long lifespan of a user, you need to capture revenue within a short time frame, and just gambling fits the bill. And we just didn't want to go the gambling route. We just didn't want to look at ourselves in a mirror and be like, we're building a gambling company and preying on people who potentially shouldn't be spending money on that. And it's all great for those people who are building that. It just wasn't for us.
Yeah.
And so we tried a bunch of different things to see other monetization models. And one of the ones that we got excited about was basically NFTs. Is there a world where we can have our free social fantasy hub be this platform where you represent your fan identity of like who you are and what you're excited about in the esports space.
Right.
And so we got really excited with that, and we started to pitch. Basically, if you're familiar with NBA Top Shot, with NFL All Day, something similar to those. And so we pitched to the MBAs of the the esports world,
Yeah.
to see if we can get that partnership, and they just weren't taking the bite. And so in the absence of that IP deal, we sort of were just like, okay, there's nothing that we can do here. And so we decided to pivot
Right.
To creating our own game, owning our own destiny, not being beholden to these game publishers, to these these league organizers. And
Yes.
so that led us to Thea Studios.
Yeah. So what are you doing like right now on the second company? How is it different than the first one?
Yeah, so we're just building we're building a game, and we're building a platform that enables people to create games on top of the tools that we've built.
Yeah.
And so we like to think that we own our own destiny, whereas before we were very beholden to to Activision, to Riot, to these other companies that just have a lot of bargaining power.
Yeah.
And we felt like our success rided on them choosing us in a partnership. And for example, we pitched to be the fantasy platform for the League of Legends North America League, and they went with one of our competitors, and that really hurt us.
Yeah.
And so we were basically banking on business development to create our moat. And we weren't able to create those business development deals, and so we didn't have a moat or monetization. And with a game, you don't depend on that. Like you build, you own, everything, and you're not restricted in what is possible. You just have a blank canvas of what you can do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So what are the key lessons you learn from your businesses? Like you can say mistakes or
Mm.
like damn hard lesson you learned.
Yeah, I mean, I think I learned how to chase product market fit,
Mm-hmm.
um, and when to know when to pivot. Um, and I think that's really hard for,
Yeah.
when you're doing a startup of, to look yourself in the mirror and say like, hey, I don't think this is working. We need to explore something else. I, I think that's hard to do.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that's probably the biggest, takeaway learning from Draft Buff. And I mean, I learned so much more outside of that as well, of just like, how to lead a company and fundraise and build a product and market and scrutinize and analyze your data and analytics and
Mm.
KPIs. But I think that's probably the biggest takeaway would just be knowing when you need to make changes. And I think we were probably slightly delayed in if we it was there was maybe 6 or so months where we were basically floundering and trying to come up with new things, and I
Yeah.
think um we didn't want to make you know that decision that like it's not us, it's the market.
Right.
And so I think we could have even saved some time if we sort of realized that like there's not something that's going to work here.
Mm. Yeah. And there is like so much thing going on the startup, right? Like you got your second one, you have to fundraise, you have to manage your team, you have to hire a new talent, and also like a business management aspect of it as well. So how do you manage all of them stuff? Like, do you do all on your own, or do you have like other people like helping you?
Yeah. So it's the same co-founders as Draft Buff. And so we work great together. My
Mm.
two co-founders, Kaustub and Guy. And so, Kaustub, I've been working together for, I don't even know, 4 years or something now.
Right.
And Guy for around 2 years. And so, they have your back, right? Like that is so important that you have co-founders that you can trust and depend on.
Yeah.
And I found that. And for example, I got married last month, and I went on
Congratulations, bro.
thank you. I went on a honeymoon with my wife, and so I was on vacation for 2 weeks, and just everything ran smoothly. Like
Mm.
I was able to take my time off, and they were just able to hold the fort down. And so I think that is just so important that
Yeah.
you have those strong teammates. The way that we currently structure it is I'm mostly in charge of fundraising, finance, HR, recruitment, and then Cowstub is in charge of like product
Yeah.
and tech, and then Guy is in charge of marketing and sort of the business. He's sort of chief revenue officer,
Mhm.
and so that sort of spreads out our responsibilities.
Yeah. And it's a key thing to finding a right partner or right people for organization, right? Like you mentioned, like a partner is the most important thing, like choosing your co-founders. So how did you find your co-founder and how did you guys align with the vision?
Yeah, so Cowstub has been one of my best friends since 2015 when I graduated college,
Mm.
and so I think that helps. We were friends first before becoming co-founders,
Right.
And so the sort of idea creation of Draft Buff, was sort of a side project that we just worked on because we were both interested in doing a side project.
Yeah.
And then it turned out that when we were working together, we worked really well together.
Hmm.
And so I think that is truly special. And I think that's not common for most people. But if you can, do sort of find a co-founder in your network, that would
Yeah.
definitely be, I think, more successful. Because it's kind of like dating, right? Like you don't, you just really, you need so many things to click. You need the
Yeah.
right vision, you need the right work, sort of like strengths and weaknesses and like compatible levels of ambiguity and being okay with uncertainty and that's just very hard to do.
Yeah.
Guy, we actually connected via LinkedIn. We were looking for a CMO,
Hmm.
and I reached out to him because he wrote sort of an article talking about marketing esports in Korea. And Kausab and I were thinking of like, how do we tap into this Korean market?
Yeah.
And so we just were talking to him and like, sort of picking his brain, not, deliberately interviewing him. And we
Yeah.
just also clicked. And so just got fortunate there.
Yeah. That's great. So what would be like your advice for if someone do looking for starting their startup and getting into business, what would be like your best advice to you can give them, my audiences?
Whew, that's a good question. Um, I mean, it depends on where you are.
Mm.
So if you're, at, a big tech, sort of a comfortable day job and you're have this sort of dream of creating something yourself, but you don't know where to begin.
Yeah.
My advice would just be to just start, hacking on a side project or finding people and start, just start creating something and just seeing, sort of trial and error, both on the idea and the people, and seeing what comes of it. Um, I think that it's scary to, leave the safety net of your day job.
Yeah.
But I think it's also incredibly rewarding and fulfilling. And so if that is something, if you're just not quite happy and you wanted something different, um, feeling like you have stronger autonomy and ownership is just it it's a great feeling to wake up every day and just really be working on something that you love. So I would encourage you to take that first step. Um, and then, once you've done that, once you've created that leap of faith and now is the fun part of like build mode of
Yeah.
creating something and just be lean, try different things and listen to your customers, get feedback, and um and so I would say like that, enjoy that aspect. And then, once you fundraise, then your responsibility is going to shift where, you are the captain steering the ship.
Yeah.
Um, and so, learn how to be an effective manager and leader and listen to to the rest of your team.
Mm.
Um, those are acquired skills that take time. But I think when you have co-founders that you trust and are aligned with you, it's kind of easy mode, because you're going to make mistakes, and so they can help like you learn and iterate on those together.
Yeah, thank you for your advice. And I have another question comes along with that. Like, how do you actually get along with disappointments, like lots of rejection you probably had for raising funds, customers, and everything? How did you overcome them kind of rejections?
Yeah, I mean, startup life is not easy.
Yeah,
Over the last 3 years, it's a roller coaster. The startup life has the highest highs and the lowest lows. And so when you're in a low, you feel like you're failing and everything that you've worked for is going to be for nothing, and you're going to be a failed entrepreneur,
yeah,
that hurts. But on the flip side, you hit a high and you reach this amazing deal, or this amazing product release, and you're just on cloud nine. And I think I don't have an easy solution, or piece of advice for this. I think knowing what the journey is ahead, and knowing when you're in a low and when you're in a high, and when you're in the low,
yeah,
remembering the highs and looking forward to those, and uh, I think will help. Um, it's yeah, it's it's fulfilling and stressful at the same time.
yeah. That's why his business isn't business is not a steady stream. It's just going to be ups and down all the time, not like as a job.
Yeah, I mean that is the byproduct of ownership, right?
Yeah,
Like if you are at Amazon, or any stable big company,
yeah,
um, you don't have that roller coaster, which means the highs are not as
mm,
high, because it's not as much you're doing, and the lows are not as low because it's also not your doing. And that's what you you need to believe that's what you want.
yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, Dylan. So, yeah, coming to the end of this podcast. So, if those listening, if anyone wants to reach out to you or learn more about yourself, where's the best place to find you?
LinkedIn would be good. My name is Dylan Sena. You can find me on LinkedIn. Um, what else? Yeah, I would probably say LinkedIn. Send me a message. Say you listen to the podcast and want to reach out. I'm happy to give back, to pay it forward. So if there are people who are in that beginning stage, or think that I can help with their journey, I've received amazing mentorship, and would like to do the same. So just say that you listen to podcast, and would love to chat, and I'm here to help.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, man. So,
Yeah,
wish you best of
likewise.
luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, wish you best of luck with your new business and your career as well. Hope you have a wonderful and congratulations again for you getting married, man. It's a
Thank
new
you.
step.
Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks. So
Bye.
it's a wrap, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast episode. I hope you enjoyed it. So those interested to learn more about Dylan, go find out in his LinkedIn profile, reach out to him if anyone have any question, want to work with him or anything have in your mind. So yeah, until then, I'll talk to you in the next episode. Thank you.